I'd have 2 minutes to do this review starting now. No, I'm kidding. That's a silly gimmick. I'm not going to do that. Question of the day, what is your favorite video game genre turned into board gaming? So what are you talking about, Brian? Well, there are several RPGs that you'd say, well, those predated the game RPGs, but you know what I'm talking about. Things like Too Many Bones is clearly based on classic RPGs like Nintendo, Super Nintendo, all those sorts of RPGs. So there, things like HeroClix could be easily traced back to like Final Fantasy Tactics, etc. So let me know in the comments below what is your favorite genre of gaming, including Adrenaline being supposedly a first-person shooter game. But what is your favorite genre of video games that have been turned successfully into board games? Which brings us to the top-down shooter today of Project Elite. We say top-down shooter. Remember things like, what was the one? Gunsmoke on the NES. It was an old Western where you're looking top-down at your character and you're shooting Akari warriors. You're shooting all these sorts of things. Some of the Contra levels were top-down and you're aiming in all the different angles. That's essentially what Project Elite really aims to be, is a top-down arcade-style shooter, run and gun sort of thing where you're trying to get your base safe and destroy those. You could compare it to a tower defense if you wanted to, but it's more of an arcade shooter. So, enough preamble. Let's talk about how the game plays. We'll come back up and talk final thoughts right now. So this is Project Elite set up for 2 players on easy for an extermination mission. There's 5 different types of missions. You can do extermination, demolition, exploration, and I believe recon are the other types of missions you can set it up for. And they just change the in-game goals for how to play for the most part. Everyone will pick a character of the 6 I believe there are. I've got Garrett here, and then Carlos over there is a Kosha, possibly an Ashoka reference, we're not really sure. But anyway, point being, these are placed onto the starting area of the board over there. Once you take your color, you'll also put your damage marker in the color of your character right here. And then you put it all the way to the left. You'll start with 4, well, depending on the player count, it's 1 basic weapon plus, anyway, it ends up being 4 for 2 players. Pick between the 2 of those weapons that you want to keep and then discard the other basic weapons. Start your characters there. Put your spawn points out here, 1, 2, or 3, they're random. Put your search tokens out there, and then put 8 events, 2, 4, 6, 8 events up top. It'll give you a grid to pick those 8 cards from based on the difficulty level that you're playing. Again, we're playing easy, so you see that there. You put your 3 reference cards for shooters, runners, and biters up top. And then you have the 3 other decks, which is the search deck, the alien deck, and the swarm spawn deck. This is going to come into play during the different modes. Now, there's a ton of great miniatures here. Awesome looking aliens. These are the gunners, the biters, and the shooters, the runners, and biters here that you see. Plus, you have the bosses in red, and these are some truly horrific looking characters. You gotta love the attention to detail here. Boy, that's not autofocusing at all. How annoying. Anyway, really good looking stuff. Everybody gets 4 action dice and 3 damage dice, and those will be used to determine how much you do when it comes to attacking and hitting and stuff like that. So there are some phases. The event phase happens first. You'll flip the first event card, and these will be things that you have to resolve. So this one says sudden movement. It says move any aliens a total of 3 spaces combined. Now this one's not bad because it happened first, and being that you don't actually spawn until the next phase, this one's really not that bad. But so we'll set that one right there. Then alien spawn happens. You'll swarm a spawn. You'll reveal as many cards based on your difficulty level. It's 1 per player in easy. So we'll take the swarm spawn. We'll pull a card here. It says runner. So we spawn 2 runners out to number 3, which means we take 2 of these runners, which are the little dog looking ones, the little hound of the Tendalos. We're going to spawn 2 of those over to spot 3. You're going to put them in adjacent places near it. If you ever have a spot full already, you will push the enemy that's there in the direction. These arrows are the directions the enemies move. I love that because you don't have to think it through. You just push them along the arrow. So let's just say this was already full and I had to push this one. This one would either move here or here depending on player's choice. But those are out there. Now, it will activate. That's what that means. The triangle on there means activate. So they will do their action phase first. Actions of runners don't have any actions. They just move, and they'll move 3 spaces. So they'll go 1, 2, 3 along the route. 1, 2, 3 along the route. So So that's what they do. And then we'll pull another card for the other characters, etc. Then the action phase starts. Now this is where it's really interesting. You either can use the timer here, or you can use the app with some ambient music and things like that that really ups the ante of the game. You get 2 minutes to do your actions. You're going to take your action dice, you're going to roll them and re-roll them a la Curse of the Escape of the Temple or whatever. To use guns, you're going to need both of those symbols on there, and once you've got it prepped, you can use that gun. Let's see if I can get it to focus right here. This is a range of 2 in any direction. You roll 2 dice, 4s, so you roll the 2 dice of these, your attack dice. 4s and ups are hits. Each hit you do will apply a damage to an enemy out there. I forgot one thing. Before we do the action phase, you're also going to spawn a boss. So you're going to go to the boss spawn deck over here. If it's a boss, that boss will come out. If it's an all clear, it's all clear. So this is a gut slug. This one will come out. This is a disgusting looking villain. The gut slug will spawn where it tells you to spawn it right here. Gross, right? You're going to spawn the boss out there. It's got 5 health, the gut slug does, and then it will activate and it moves 2, etc. But that's what the gut slug does. So it goes out here. So you now have a boss on the board as well to take care of. So not too hard to deal with. Anyway, that's that phase. Now the action phase, like we were talking about, you have different actions on the board here. You could move. These are things like movement. Each one of these you roll, you get a space of movement. You have the mechanics here. These are things for typically for spaces on the board, whether it be your weapon or things like that. You also have this action, which you can just sit there and leave until you want to re-roll. This means you move an enemy 1 space. Guns are typically used to ready your weapons. And then last but not least, these are for action spaces as well, but you also have the search icons. When you're adjacent to or on a search icon, you can pick this search icon up. When you do, you can either immediately draw 3 cards then, or you can hold on to this token till the end of the round and draw the 3 cards and choose from those. Now, it all depends on what you want to do based on where you are time-wise. You can always have access to how much time there is. Anyway, the results of this action must be resolved of the red ones, but anything else you can just pick up and re-roll to your heart's content. You have 2 minutes to do your action phase. You're going to move along the board. The goal of extermination is to get adjacent to these and assign 4 gun symbols to these extermination things. Now, the interesting thing of note, anytime you see this symbol here, you see how there's a yellow and black bar around this symbol and this here? Anytime you see that yellow and black, it means the dice will lock, which means that dice is stuck until something frees it. This happens when you take enough damage to get into this yellow zone, your first dice locks. If you have enough damage to get into this zone, your second dice locks. You can lose the game in 2 ways. Either these, somebody dying, or an enemy getting into the starting area over there. If a dice is locked, there are ways to unlock it. One would be healing. The other way would be out here. Once these dice come off, once this is fulfilled, it comes off the board and those dice come back to you. So the goal is to exterminate those nests is essentially what you're doing in extermination, whereas the other ones you're kind of going to blow up stuff with demolition, etc. There's things like acid, there's things like slime that will cause enemies to slide forward more. But think of it like a top-down shooter, like old school arcade shooters where you're just constantly just mowing down enemies. But that is the game. Essentially, you're going to do that until your goal is met. Now, after the action phase, the alien activation phase will happen. So you're going to activate all the aliens out there. They'll do their action listed at the top. Bosses will do theirs, and then you'll then move them up. They'll do damage to you if they're adjacent to you. Bosses have multiple hit points. Spawn swarmlings, they have just 1 hit point. But that's about it. That's how you play the game. You will do that and flip all of those event cards. Again, you just rinse and repeat that until either you win or they win. But that is Project Elite. No, I'm kidding. I already did that joke. So no, I'm not going to do 2 minutes. I already talked that fast anyway. I could probably do the review in 2 minutes, but I'm not going to. First and foremost, Project Elite looks good on the table. We always do art and presentation first because that can swing someone's opinion of a game sometimes. Art and presentation opinion right now. First is the game looks good on the table. These suckers would paint up great because they're cool mini or not miniatures, and you just know that that means quality, right? They look good. All the characters are cool. They all have a different weapon style, and there's a lot of different cool types of characters in there. There's only 3 different types of swarm monsters, and that's okay. I feel like if you got more than that, you'd start bogging the game down because there are the boss monsters, which are ferociously hideous, but they would paint up incredibly well. So first and foremost, It kind of goes without saying, and some of you, this might be your first foray into a miniature style game because it's not quite the heavy over the top miniature style game. But you might think, well, what does that mean, cool mini or not style? They're very detailed, very quality, nice looking miniatures that have a lot of detail. So with or without paint, they look great on the table. Now, the actual boards themselves, what I like about is when presentation and art meets function, and it does it in a really well. Somebody told me, I think Emerson said that's art design versus just art. And the art design of this game is really well thought out. My favorite thing about the presentation and art design has nothing to do with the cards or the really nice personal player boards that are cut out where things lock into, whether it be dice or your player color, has nothing to do with the actual miniatures themselves. My favorite piece of art design in this game are the arrows on the squares. You say, Brian, but why? Doesn't that seem like it gets in the way of the art of the square? No, because there are a lot of times in games when you're playing for the AI character of the bad guys that you have to stop and think. You go, well, wait a minute, do I do this? Do I roll that surge? Especially things like Descent when you're playing in the app, or Imperial Assault. Mansions of Madness is not so bad about it because it was built around it to start with as opposed to being put on the back end. But there are a lot of times where you have to think for the AI and it takes you out of the game for a minute. Versus this one, you follow the arrows. I love that. I love that the biters, the shooters, and the runners, they just follow the arrows. You just look down and go, oh, they move 3 spaces, boom, boom, boom. That is brilliant. That is so smart because also it fits the genre, it fits the style that these running gun, zombie, alien sort of things are just mindless. They're just going to run straight forward and try to kill you. I love that. They're not rolling surges, they're not doing anything. They're doing their abilities and they're trying to kill you. So excellent on the art presentation, art design of those red arrows pointing exactly which direction the enemies follow. It's a small thing. It really makes the game, in my opinion. Now, as far as the mechanics go themselves, let's talk about that. I love simultaneous real-time games. I really do. I just played one that I gave a pretty negative review recently. You can check that out this week. It was Pendulum. I did not like the simultaneity of that game, whereas this, it just works. Because the genre's right, there's only 2 minutes of it, more or less, at a time, and you are focused on your dice. You only have 4 action dice to work with, sometimes less, and you only have a few dice to work with as far as damage. It allows you to not have to worry about juggling so many things. You're just looking at your dice going, oh crud, there's a red one, got to move an enemy for it. Oh great, I can use this later. If you like Escape the Curse of the Temple, but you want something a little meatier, 100% this is the game for you. If you do not like simultaneous games, if you do not like real-time games, skip it completely because that's the major mechanic. There is no mode to slow down and do this turn by turn either. You can't just say, well, let's do the turn-based, this is it. So if you like that sort of game, 100% Project Elite is for you. I like the way that you spawn the enemies. I like the way it's straightforward every time. There's an event that comes up, you got to take care of that. The objectives are very simple. You get out there, if you're doing destruction or whatever it's called, demolition, or I don't remember what it's called, but if you get out there, you know what you're doing. It's very simple to figure out. I love that the weapons can get better. I love that your dice can get better depending on what you roll and depending on what equipment you get. All in all, the game looks great on the table. It plays great. It's really, really fun. And the player count scaling there's no problems there. I feel like it's just as easy, you know what I mean? Just as quality no matter what player count you're playing as because you can adjust the difficulty level. All I know is it's just fun. It's a fun game to run around and try to get. The only thing that's really hard sometimes is getting some movement. So if you got a short range weapon and you're like, oh, I need some movement, and you keep moving the enemies towards you, that gets problematic. But have those guns ready and roll the other 2 dice if you have a gun that takes 2. But really, really good game. Project Elite. If you like real time, 100% put this in your collection. If you don't like real time, skip it completely. But those of you on the fence, you say, I don't know, man. I don't know how I feel about real time. Go get this. I'm telling you, it's Amerithrashy as it gets. It's so stinking cool, and it doesn't bog down with unnecessary, well, if this happens, then check this rule, and then maybe cross-check against this ability. No, there's none of that. It's straightforward in a good way. In the most positive way I can say that it's simple. But there's some complexity, but at the core, simple. And that's something that sometimes we lose in gaming. We lose the ability to love simplicity. even in those nice miniature style Ameritrash games. So go check out Project Elite. I'm a huge fan of this game. It's staying in the collection. I can't wait to get it to the table some more. Really, really fun, really neat game. Looks great, easy to set up, and everything packs into the tray. That is a win for me. So I'm Brian Drake here on the Dice Tower. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, etc. at Dice Tower Brian. Till next time, we'll see you. How'd I do? 2 minutes?